I'm Layla Harris, 28 years old, a drone pilot for the United States Air Force. They didn't need bombs or bullets to destroy me. They used my own mother. She cried and gave me an ultimatum. Either I quit my career, or she would disown me. But that was just the opening act for a much more vicious plot. They conspired with the press to paint me not as an officer, but as a mentally unstable time bomb who could be kicked out of the service at any moment. The entire time, I thought I was fighting my mother's fears, but I was wrong. The real mastermind was my own brother, Ethan, the one who always clapped me on the shoulder and said, "I'm always on your side." He turned my career into a sick business venture, draining our mother of over $10,000 under the guise of finding me a specialist. All just to satisfy his sick jealousy and watch me get trampled into the ground. And they almost succeeded. They thought they had me cornered, ready to throw it all away and come home a failure. But they forgot one crucial thing about my job: I gather intelligence. And now I have a recording, the ironclad proof that exposes his entire scheme, from the jealousy that fueled it to every dirty dollar he scammed from our mother. He started this war with lies, and I'm going to end it with the truth. The Mojave sun beat down on the hood of my Tacoma, the heat shimmering off the asphalt in waves. It was a different kind of heat than the contained, air-conditioned chill of the GCS, the ground control station where I spent my days. Out there, in the desert, the world was raw and unforgiving. In here in the box, the world was pixels and data streams, a place of calculated distance and absolute precision. I preferred the box. I took a slow breath, the air tasting of dust and sagebrush as I pulled into the driveway of the house I grew up in. It hadn't changed. The same pale yellow siding, the same overgrown rose bushes my mom, Carol, always swore she was going to prune, the same slight sag in the porch swing. It was a snapshot of a life I no longer lived, a skin I had shed. My brother, Ethan, was already on the porch, a welcoming smile on his face. He leaned against the railing, looking every bit the small-town hero who'd stayed behind. He ran a moderately successful contracting business, had married his high school sweetheart, and was, by all accounts, living the life everyone here expected. "Look what the eagle dragged in," he said, stepping forward to wrap me in a hug. He smelled faintly of sawdust and coffee. "How's my high-flying little sister?" "Still flying," I said, my voice a little tight. "Just not very high. We top out around 50,000 feet. He laughed, a genuine, easy sound that made the knot in my stomach loosen just a bit. Always the literalist. "Come on, Mom's been pacing a trench in the living room carpet waiting for you." As if on cue, the screen door creaked open and my mother stood there, wiping her hands on her apron. Her smile was thinner than Ethan, stretched tight across her face. "Layla, honey, you made it." "Wouldn't miss your pot roast for anything, Mom," I said, stepping inside. The house smelled of roasted meat, onions, and that faint, underlying scent of lavender potpourri she'd kept in the same bowl for 20 years. It was the smell of my childhood, a scent that was supposed to mean safety. Lately, it just made me feel trapped. My dad, Frank, looked up from the television where a golf tournament was playing on mute. He was a quiet man, a man who had learned that silence was the easiest way to keep the peace in a house run by my mother's anxieties. "Hey, kiddo. Good to see you." He gave me a quick, one-armed hug before sinking back into his recliner. Dinner started peacefully enough. Ethan asked about my latest training exercises, his questions sharp and specific. "So, the new sensor package on the Reaper, is it really as good as they say? Can you actually read a license plate from 30,000 feet? "It's impressive," I admitted, pushing mashed potatoes around my plate. "The optics are a huge leap forward." "That's incredible," he said, shaking his head in admiration. "Building houses feels pretty boring compared to that." "It's not boring, dear," my mother interjected, her voice sharp. "It's good, honest work. You build things, you don't watch people from the sky." And there it was, the opening salvo. I'd been waiting for it. "Mom, please," Ethan said, giving her a warning look. "We talked about this." "I know we did, Ethan, but I can't just sit here and pretend it doesn't bother me," she said, putting her fork down with a clatter. She turned her watery blue eyes on me. "I had another nightmare last night, Layla." I clenched my jaw. "Mom, we've been over this. My job is ISR intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance. I'm an eye in the sky. I provide overwatch for our troops on the ground. I help keep them safe." "You watch people die," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You sit in a comfortable chair in Nevada and you watch boys half a world away get hurt or worse. And sometimes you're the one who pulls the trigger." "That is a gross oversimplification and you know it," I said, my voice colder than I intended. "Every action is cleared, authorized, and vetted through a dozen channels. It's not a video game." "It looks like one," she cried, her voice rising. Ethan showed me a documentary. It looks exactly like a video game. How can that not mess with your head? How can that be a natural way for a person to live? My dad cleared his throat. Carol, maybe we can talk about this later. No, Frank, I want to talk about it now, she insisted. I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see what you might be seeing. It's not right. A woman, my daughter, involved in that kind of violence. Mom, I'm a captain in the United States Air Force, I said, my voice low and steady, the way my commanding officer, Major Davis, had taught me. Control the tone, control the room. I took an oath. I'm proud of what I do. I'm saving American lives. And what about your soul? She asked, her eyes pleading. What is this job doing to your soul? I read articles, Layla, about the PTSD, the psychological trauma. They call it moral injury. I looked at Ethan. He was staring at his plate, refusing to meet my eyes. He'd shown her a documentary. He was feeding this. The supportive brother act was starting to fray at the edges. My soul is just fine, I said, and my psychological health is monitored constantly. It's a requirement of the job. I'm fine. You're not fine, she said, shaking her head. You're harder now, colder. You come home and you're a stranger to me. I don't know this person who can talk about death and destruction like it's just another day at the office. The pot roast in my stomach felt like a lead weight. This was why I hated coming home. At Creech, I was Captain Harris. I was respected. My skills were valued. Here, I was a disappointment, a source of anxiety, a monster in my mother's nightmares. My best friend, Sarah, another pilot in my squadron, had warned me. We'd grabbed coffee before I left. You sure you want to go? She asked. You know how they get. It's just a weekend, Sar, I'd said. I can handle my mom for 48 hours. Now, I wasn't so sure. My mother took a shaky breath and delivered the final blow. I can't do it anymore, Layla. I can't live with this constant fear, this constant shame. Shame? The word escaped my lips like a puff of smoke. You're ashamed of me? I am worried sick about you, she corrected, her voice cracking. And I'm giving you a choice. I want you to talk to your tell them you need a new assignment, something on the ground, logistics, human resources, I don't care, something normal, something that doesn't involve killing. I stared at her, dumbfounded. She wanted me to throw away my career. The years of training, the grueling hours, the immense pride I felt in being one of the best at what I do. You can't be serious, I said. I have never been more serious in my life, she said, her expression hardening. It's either that job or it's this family. You choose. If you walk out that door and go back to that chair, then don't bother coming back. You will no longer have a mother. The silence that followed her ultimatum was heavier than the pot roast in my stomach. It was a dense, suffocating thing, absorbing all the air in the room. My father stared at the muted television, his jaw working silently. Ethan finally looked up from his plate, a carefully constructed mask of distress on his face. Mom, that's not fair, he said, his voice a low, placating rumble. You can't ask her to choose like that. I have to, Ethan, she replied, her gaze still locked on me, her eyes shining with unshed tears and a terrifying certainty. This is not a job, it's a sickness, and I won't have it in this family. It's my career, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. I could feel my pulse thrumming in my ears, a steady, measured beat. My training kicked in, a calm wave washing over the initial shock. Assess the threat, analyze the variables, do not react emotionally. It's my life. You don't get to issue ultimatums about my life. As long as I am your mother, I do, she shot back. I pushed my chair back slowly, the sound of its legs scraping against the linoleum loud in the tense quiet. I think I've lost my appetite. Without another word, I walked out of the dining room, through the living room, and onto the front porch. The screen door slammed shut behind me. The evening air was cooler now, the oppressive heat of the day giving way to a gentle desert breeze. I walked to the edge of the porch and gripped the railing, my knuckles turning white. I stared out at the familiar, quiet street, at the perfectly manicured lawns, and the houses where normal families were having normal dinners. A few moments later, the door opened and closed softly. It was Ethan. Hey, he said, coming to stand beside me. He didn't touch me, just leaned against the post. Are you okay? Define okay, I said, not looking at him. Am I physically unharmed? Yes. Am I currently being threatened with disownment by my own mother over a career I've dedicated my life to? Also yes. He sighed. She's just scared, Layla. You have to try and see it from her perspective. I've been trying to see it from her perspective for 2 years, Ethan, ever since my first deployment. All it gets me is grief, and now this. I finally turned to him. And you're not helping. A documentary? Really? You know she hangs on your every word. You deliberately fed her paranoia. He had the grace to look ashamed, but only for a second. I thought if she understood what you did, she'd be more accepting. I didn't know it would backfire like this. I was trying to help. Some help, I muttered, turning back to the street. Look, she doesn't mean it, he said, his voice earnest. Not really, it's just the shock. She'll calm down, you know how she gets, she just needs time. Time isn't going to change my job description, Ethan. No, but maybe you could compromise, he suggested. Just a little, for her, for the family. Maybe you could talk to your like she said. Not about quitting, but about, I don't know, a temporary transfer? Just to show her you're listening. Get her to back off the ledge. I stared at him. A temporary transfer? You think the Air Force is like your construction business? You can't just ask to be put on drywall duty for a few months because your mom is having nightmares. That's career suicide. It shows a lack of commitment, a lack of mental fortitude. It would follow me for the rest of my service. Okay, bad idea, he said, holding up his hands. I don't know your world, Layla. I'm just trying to find a solution here. I don't want to see this family get torn apart. He paused, then added, you know my friend Mark from the local paper? The guy who did that piece on veteran homelessness last year? He's really good at explaining complex things to the public. Maybe if he wrote a story about what you do, a positive one, and Mom saw it in print, she'd understand. Frame it as a local hero story. I just shook my head, exhausted. Bringing a reporter into this is the last thing I need. My life required discretion. The missions were classified. My identity as a pilot was sensitive. The idea of public exposure made my skin crawl. Look, I appreciate you trying to help, but there's no easy fix for this. I'm on your side, Layla. Always, he said, placing a hand on my shoulder. It felt heavy. Just be patient with her. He went back inside, leaving me alone with the chirping crickets and the weight of my mother's choice. A little later, the door creaked open again. This time it was my dad. He was holding 2 bottles of beer, one of which he held out to me. She's gone to bed, he said quietly. He twisted the cap off his own bottle and took a long drink. She didn't mean it, you know, not the way it came out. It came out pretty clearly, Dad. Quit your job or you're not my daughter anymore. He winced. Your mother, her fear is bigger than her logic sometimes. Since you enlisted, it's like she's been waiting for the other shoe to drop. She reads these articles online, these horror stories, and she thinks every single one of them is about you. So you agree with her? You think I should quit? No, he said, surprising me with the force of his answer. He looked me in the eye, his own tired gaze clear for once. Never. I've never been prouder of you, Layla. I was a mechanic in the Army for 20 years. I fixed Jeeps. You fly a $10 million piece of machinery that can see a needle in a haystack from 10 miles up. You're living a life I couldn't have even dreamed of. Don't you ever let her, or anyone, make you feel ashamed of that. Tears pricked my eyes. Then why don't you say that to her? Why do you just sit there and let her tear me apart? He looked down at his beer bottle, a deep sadness settling over his features. Because peace has been my only goal for 30 years, kiddo. And with your mother, peace means not arguing when she gets like this. It's a battle I learned I can't win. I'm sorry. I'm a coward when it comes to her. We stood in silence, the unspoken truth of my parents' marriage hanging between us. He was a good man, my father, but he was not a strong one. In this fight, I was on my own. Later, I lay in my childhood bed, the floral wallpaper and the collection of horse figurines on my dresser feeling like they belonged to another person in another lifetime. I couldn't sleep. The ultimatum echoed in my mind. I pulled out my phone and dialed Sarah. She answered on the second ring. Captain Harris's 24/7 crisis hotline, Sergeant Sarah speaking, she said, her voice a welcome slice of sanity. Hey, Sar. Uh-oh, I know that tone. The family dinner was a catastrophic failure, wasn't it? I gave her the short, ugly version, ending with my mother's ultimatum. She was quiet for a moment. Wow, she finally said. She really went nuclear this time. What did you say? I walked out. What could I say? There's no reasoning with that. Damn right there isn't, Sarah said, her voice hardening. This isn't about her being scared, Layla. This is about control. She can't control your job, she can't control the risks, so she's trying to control you. That quit or you're out garbage is a classic manipulation tactic. Don't you dare fall for it. I know, I said, sighing. My dad basically said I shouldn't give in, and my brother thinks I should compromise to keep the peace. Your brother can go build a deck, she said bluntly. He doesn't get a vote, and your dad's right, but he's not the one who has to face her. This is your call. There is no call to make, I said, a fresh wave of resolve washing over me. I'm not quitting, I'm not transferring, I'm not compromising. I worked my ass off to be where I am. I'm good at my job, Sar. I make a difference. I know you do, she said softly. Listen to me, Layla. You are Captain Layla Harris of the United States Air Force. You are part of the most advanced remote combat and surveillance wing on the planet. You have more responsibility in a single Tuesday shift than your entire family has in a year. Don't you let them shrink you back down into the little girl whose room has horse figurines on the dresser. I looked at the dusty ceramic horses. It's already packed. I'm leaving first thing in the morning. Good, she said. Come back to base. Come back to your real family. We've got your 6. I hung up the phone feeling lighter, clearer. The morning was tense. My mother wouldn't look at me. She made a big show of making breakfast for my dad and Ethan, her movements stiff and angry, pointedly ignoring my presence in the kitchen. Ethan's wife, Jessica, arrived to pick him up for a Saturday morning errand. She gave me a tight, sympathetic smile that didn't reach her eyes. The sides were already chosen. I packed my bag, brought it to the front door, and faced my mother. I'm leaving, Mom, I said. She turned from the stove, her face a pale, strained mask. Have you thought about what I said? I have, I replied, my voice steady. And the answer is no, I'm not leaving the Air Force. Her face crumpled. Then you're leaving this family. No, I said, my heart aching but my resolve firm. You're the one telling me to leave. That's your choice, not mine. I looked at my dad, who gave me a small, pained nod. I looked at Ethan, who just stood there looking helpless. Then I turned, walked out the door, and didn't look back. Use arrow up and arrow down to select a turn, enter to jump to it, and escape to return to the chat. The drive back to Creech was a blur of sagebrush and righteous anger. Every mile I put between me and that pale yellow house, I felt the tight coils in my chest loosen. Sarah was right. It was about control. My mother couldn't handle the fact that my life was entirely my own, governed by rules and responsibilities she didn't understand and couldn't influence. She had used the only weapon she had left, conditional love, and I had refused to pay the ransom. Back on base, the familiar rhythm of military life was a comforting balm. The crisp salute from the airmen at the gate, the uniformity of the buildings, the shared sense of purpose in the faces of everyone I passed, it was my world, my real world. I met Sarah at the gym. I needed to burn off the residual adrenaline to sweat out the last traces of my family's dysfunction. So, you're officially an orphan, she said, handing me a water bottle as I stepped off the treadmill, breathing heavily. Feels like it, I panted. The silence in the truck on the way back was deafening. No angry texts, no pleading voicemails, just nothing, like I've been erased. Give it time, she said grimly. When the silent treatment doesn't work, she'll move on to phase 2, the guilt campaign. Aunts and uncles will start calling. You'll get emails about how you're breaking her heart. Let them, I said, taking a long drink of water. I'm done. I'm building a wall and mounting emotional turrets on it. Sarah laughed. That's my girl. Now come on, let's see if you can still bench your body weight after all that pot roast. The next few weeks were quiet. Eerily so, I threw myself into my work. My shifts in the GCS were a refuge. Inside the cool, dark room, surrounded by the glow of a dozen screens, the chaos of my family life faded away. Here, the world made sense. There were clear objectives, rules of engagement, and a direct chain of command. The MQ-9 Reaper I was flying, a silent hunter circling miles above a hostile landscape, was an extension of my will. The data it fed me was pure, unfiltered truth. There were no emotional ultimatums at 30,000 feet. My commanding officer, Major Davis, was a calm, no-nonsense man who had seen it all. He ran our squadron with quiet efficiency and had an uncanny ability to know when something was off with one of his pilots. He called me into his office about a month after the blow-up with my mother. Harris, he said, gesturing to the chair in front of his desk. Close the door. My stomach tightened. Sir? At ease, Captain, he said, leaning back in his chair. He had a file open on his desk, but he wasn't looking at it. He was looking at me. Your last 3 mission debriefs have been exemplary. Your target acquisition times are down by 12%. Your surveillance reports are flawless. You're at the top of your game, but your face looks like you haven't slept in a month. I didn't say anything. I'm not asking you to tell me your life story, he continued. But the Air Force has resources for a reason. If there's something going on at home, something distracting you, I need to know about it. Because when you're in that chair, I need your head 100% in the game. The lives of the guys on the ground depend on it. There is something going on, sir, I said, deciding that honesty was the only play. A family issue, but I can assure you it is not affecting my performance. If anything, it's making me more focused. Because the GCS is an escape, he said, nodding slowly. It wasn't a question. Yes, sir. I get it, he said. More than you know, my ex-wife used to say the Reaper was the other woman. Said I was more married to the mission than to her. Maybe she was right. He closed the file. All right, Harris, I'll take you at your word. You're a damn fine pilot and I need you at your best. But the offer for resources stands. Chaplain, family support, psych services, they're not a sign of weakness. They're tools. Use them if you need them. Understood, sir, thank you. Walking out of his office, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. He was right. The mission was all that mattered. A week later, the other shoe dropped. But it wasn't a phone call from a guilt-tripping aunt. It was an email from Ethan. Subject, please read Layla. I know you're not talking to us right now, and I get it. But things are really bad at home. Mom isn't eating. She barely gets out of bed. She just cries all day. Dad tries to talk to her, but she won't listen. She keeps saying she failed as a mother, that she raised a killer. I know you're angry, but this is destroying her. She's not the same person. I'm really worried about her mental health. Whatever you think of her ultimatum, you have to see that it's coming from a place of real pain. Can't you just call her? Just let her hear your voice? Ethan, I stared at the email, my heart a cold, hard knot. It was exactly what Sarah had predicted. Phase 2, the guilt campaign. And Ethan was the lead infantryman. I typed and deleted a dozen angry responses before finally settling on a short, neutral one. Ethan, Mom needs professional help. My calling her is not going to fix the underlying issues. She should talk to a therapist. His reply came back almost instantly. A therapist? Layla, this isn't about therapy. This is about her daughter. She needs you, not a stranger. I didn't respond. I forwarded the email chain to Sarah with the message. Phase 2 has commenced. Her reply was a single, perfect meme of Admiral Akbar from Star Wars. It's a trap. But the trap was more sophisticated than I realized. A few days later, I was in the base library when I stumbled across an online article from the Nevada Sentinel, a small local paper that served my hometown and a few surrounding communities. The headline made my blood run cold. A Mother's Nightmare, the hidden psychological toll on America's drone WARRORS. The article, written by a Mark Davidson, began with a heart-wrenching, anonymous account from a local mother whose daughter was a drone pilot at a nearby Air Force base. It was my mother. Every word, every phrase was hers. The nightmares, the fear for her daughter's soul, the feeling that she was a stranger. She painted a picture of a daughter who was emotionally detached, cold, and suffering from severe, undiagnosed PTSD. She won't admit it, the anonymous mother was quoted as saying, but I see the emptiness in her eyes. The military encourages them to hide it to pretend they're machines, but they're not machines. They're human beings, and this work is destroying them from the inside out. My daughter is a ghost. I'm watching her disappear. The article was a masterpiece of emotional manipulation. It didn't just target me, it attacked the entire drone program, using my personal family drama as its emotional core. Mark Davidson, Ethan's friend, the reporter he had mentioned on the porch, the supportive brother, the concerned son, it was all a lie. He hadn't just been trying to keep the peace. He'd been plotting. My hands were shaking as I kept reading. The article went on to quote an anonymous source close to the family, who confirmed the mother's fears. This source, unquestionably Ethan, spoke of my increasing isolation, my inability to connect with family, and my dark, morbid sense of humor. He even mentioned a minor car accident I'd had 2 years ago, framing it as a possible suicide attempt. It had been a fender bender in the base parking lot. But the worst part, the part that made me feel physically ill, was the photograph. It was a picture of me from my Air Force Academy graduation, my face beaming with pride. The caption underneath read, "Before the screen, a young pilot full of hope before her assignment to the controversial drone program." My own brother had supplied them with a photo. This wasn't just a mother's misguided plea. This was a coordinated attack. They weren't just trying to guilt me into quitting. They were trying to force the Air Force's hand. An article like this, raising questions about a pilot's mental stability, could trigger a mandatory psychological evaluation. It could get me grounded. It was a kill shot aimed directly at my career, fired by my own family. I printed the article, my movements stiff and robotic. I walked out of the library and straight to Major Davis's office. I didn't wait to be announced. I knocked once and walked in. His secretary squawked in protest. Davis looked up, surprised. "Captain, what is it?" I placed the printed article on his desk. My hand was shaking so hard the paper rattled. "Sir," I said, my voice as cold and steady as I could make it, "we have a problem." Major Davis read the article in silence. His expression, usually so placid and unreadable, hardened with every paragraph. He scanned the lines about my supposed PTSD, the twisted account of the fender bender, the insidious quotes from the anonymous source. When he finished, he didn't look at me. He looked at the wall behind his desk, where a large framed photo of his squadron was mounted. He was silent for a full minute. "Mark Davidson," he said, his voice flat, I know that name. He's been trying to get a source inside Creech for a year, wrote a slanted piece about our base housing last fall, a real bottom feeder. He finally turned his gaze back to me. His eyes were like chips of ice. This anonymous mother. This is your mother, isn't it, Captain? Yes, sir, I said, my voice barely a whisper. And the source close to the family. Who is that? I believe it's my brother Ethan, sir. He tapped a finger on the photograph in the article, my smiling, hopeful face from graduation. And who gave them this? My brother, sir. The admission tasted like ash. Davis leaned back, the leather of his chair groaning in protest. So, this family issue you mentioned, it's not just an issue. It's an active campaign to sabotage your career. That's what it appears to be, sir. They're not just trying to get you grounded, Harris, he said, his tone grim. They're trying to make you unemployable in this field. An article like this, filled with allegations of mental instability, could get your security clearance reviewed. Without that clearance, you can't even clean the latrines on this base. The room felt suddenly cold. My security clearance was the bedrock of my entire career. It was more than a background check. It was a testament to my character, my stability, my trustworthiness. To have it questioned, to have it threatened by my own family's lies, was a violation I hadn't even considered. What do I do, sir? I asked. He picked up his phone. First, you're going to talk to Jag. He dialed a number. Then, you're going to talk to public affairs. Then, you're going to have a mandatory sit-down with the squadron psychologist, Dr. Evans. Not because I believe a word of this garbage, he said, gesturing to the article, but because an official allegation has been made in a public forum, and we have to follow protocol. We're going to get ahead of this, and we're going to do it by the book. He spoke into the phone. Captain Rivera, please, Major Davis calling. He covered the receiver. We're going to build a firewall around you, Harris, but you need to be completely transparent with us. Everything, got it? Yes, sir, I said, a small flicker of hope igniting in the pit of my stomach. I wasn't alone in this. The Air Force was closing ranks around me. The next 72 hours were a whirlwind. I met with Captain Eva Rivera from the Judge Advocate General's office. She was sharp, fast-talking, and had a mind like a steel trap. She read the article, her perfectly plucked eyebrows rising higher and higher. This is defamation, clear and simple, she said, tossing the papers onto her desk. Libel, to be precise. The problem is, as a public figure, and a military officer counts as one, the bar for proving libel is incredibly high. We'd have to prove actual malice. That the reporter, Mr. Davidson, and your brother knew the information was false and published it anyway with the intent to harm you. But they did, I insisted. My brother knows I'm not suicidal. He knows I'm not a ghost. He twisted everything. I believe you, Rivera said. But proving it in court is another matter. It becomes a he said, she said against your own family. It would be a messy, public, and very painful fight. She leaned forward. Right now, our primary goal isn't to sue a local newspaper. It's to protect your career. The best defense is a good offense. We need to discredit the article and reaffirm your fitness for duty. Next was public affairs. Lieutenant Colonel Chen was a polished, media-savvy officer who looked at the article not as a personal attack, but as a strategic challenge. Okay, so they've established a narrative, he said, pacing in front of a whiteboard. The broken soldier. It's a classic media trope. It's compelling, it's emotional, and it's very hard to fight with facts and regulations. We can't issue a press release saying Captain Harris is mentally sound. That just gives the story more oxygen. It makes us look defensive. So what do? I asked. For now, we do nothing. Officially, he said. We monitor the situation, see if it gets any traction. In the meantime, you live your life, you do your job, you are the picture of a competent, professional Air Force officer. We fight their narrative with your reality. My session with Dr. Evans, the squadron psychologist, was the part I dreaded most, but she was surprisingly disarming. She had kind eyes and a calm demeanor that immediately put me at ease. I've read the article, Layla, she said, using my first name. And I've read your file. I see no indicators, past or present, for the kind of severe PTSD or moral injury described here. But I want to hear it from you. How are you? And for the first time, I let some of the carefully constructed walls crumble. I told her about the pressure, the ultimatum, the profound sense of betrayal. I told her about the anger and the hurt, and the exhaustion of having to defend my life's choices to the people who were supposed to be my biggest supporters. It sounds to me, she said when I finished, like you're having a perfectly normal reaction to a highly dysfunctional family situation. You're not suffering from a moral injury because of your job, you're suffering from an emotional injury because of your family. Her words were a validation, a weight lifted. So, I'm not crazy, She smiled gently. Far from it, you're resilient, but resilience doesn't mean you don't get wounded. We'll need to schedule some follow-up sessions officially to document your fitness. But between you and me, you're fine, now go do your job. I walked out of her office and took my first full deep breath in days. I was fine. My career was, for the moment, secure. But the anger at my brother still burned hot and bright. How could he do this? The gushing admiration, the I'm on your side always, what was it all for? That evening, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Layla, it was Jessica, Ethan's wife. Her voice was strained, hesitant. Jessica, how did you get this number? Ethan left his phone at home. I saw your email exchange from a few weeks ago, and then I saw the article online today. Oh, Layla, I am so sorry. She sounded like she was crying. Did you know about this, Jessica? Did you know he was planning this? No, God, no, she said quickly. I knew your mom was upset, of course. Ethan talked about it all the time. He kept saying he had to do something to save you from yourself. He said your job was changing you, making you hard. I thought he was just going to try to talk to you to stage some kind of intervention. I had no idea he would go to a reporter. I had no idea he would lie like that. He lied about everything, Jessica. The fender bender, he called it a suicide attempt. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. He told me he was worried it was a cry for help. I believed him. I didn't know he was feeding it to a stranger. She paused, then her voice dropped to a whisper. He's so jealous of you, Layla. He's always been. When you got into the academy, when you got your wings, he was always so proud on the surface, but underneath it, he hated that you got out. He hates that you have this big, important life while he's still here, building houses and fixing leaky faucets. He sees your success as his failure. The pieces clicked into place. The fawning admiration was a cover. The concern was a weapon. It wasn't about saving me. It was about punishing me for leaving, for succeeding. Why are you telling me this, Jessica? Because it's wrong, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Family shouldn't do this to each other, and because I found something. He has a folder in his desk, labeled Layla Project. It's full of printed articles about drone pilot PTSD, a copy of your graduation photo, even some old medical records from when you broke your arm in high school. And there's a ledger. A ledger? Yeah, it looks like your mom has been giving him money, a lot of money, for researching treatment options for you, $10,000 so far, Layla. I felt the floor drop out from under me. This was a long con. A carefully orchestrated campaign of lies, funded by our mother's fear and executed by her golden boy son. He wasn't just jealous, he was a predator, and his own family was his prey. Thank you for telling me, Jessica, I said, my voice eerily calm. What are you going to do? She whispered. I thought about Captain Rivera, about the high bar for proving libel. I thought about Lieutenant Colonel Chen, about fighting their narrative with my reality. And I thought about the skills I used every single day in my job, intelligence gathering, surveillance, building a pattern of life. He wants to play games, I said, a cold, hard resolve solidifying in my gut. Fine, let's play. The conversation with Jessica changed the equation. This was no longer just a desperate mother and a jealous brother lashing out. This was calculated. It was premeditated. It was a fraud. The $10,000 for research was the key. Ethan wasn't just manipulating our mother's emotions, he was exploiting them for financial gain, using my career as the justification. That was the malice Captain Rivera had been talking about. Now I just had to prove it. My first call was to Sarah. I met her at a quiet bar off base, a dusty place with a jukebox that only played Johnny Cash. I laid out everything Jessica had told me. The Layla Project folder, the fake research, the money, 10 grand. Sarah whistled, taking a long sip of her beer. Your brother isn't just a snake, he's a goddamn entrepreneur. What's his end game? He gets you grounded, you come home a broken failure, and he gets to be the hero who tried to save you while cashing mom's checks. That's a special level of evil. I think that's exactly his end game, I said, stirring my drink. He gets to tear me down, build himself up as the concerned son, and make a profit doing it. It's the perfect crime because he thinks I'll never fight back. He thinks I'll be too scared of destroying the family. But he already destroyed the family, Sarah pointed out. You're just the one who has to clean up the mess. She leaned in, her expression serious. So what's your ISR target? What's the objective? I need proof, I said, my mind starting to work like I was planning a mission. I need proof that he knows the PTSD story is a lie and that he's conspiring with that reporter to sell that lie for his own benefit. I need something concrete that I can take to Rivera. Okay, Captain Harris, she said, a small, grim smile on her face. Let's plan your op. We spent the next hour breaking it down. Ethan was the primary target. Mark Davidson, the reporter, was the secondary. The center of gravity was the lie itself, the narrative they were building. My job was to find the fault lines, the weak points where their story didn't hold up. I started with passive surveillance. I reactivated my old social media accounts, the ones I hadn't touched in years. I wanted to see what Ethan's public persona looked like. It was a carefully curated image: the devoted husband, the hardworking small business owner, the loving son. He had pictures of him and Jessica at community fundraisers, photos of the decks he'd built, and most gallingly, a recent post with my mother, her face looking thin and wan. The caption read, "Taking care of my favorite lady. Family is everything." The hypocrisy was so thick I could taste it. Then I did a deep dive on Mark Davidson. He had a small professional blog, a portfolio of his articles. They all had a similar theme: finding the dark underbelly of respected institutions. The VA, the local school board, the police department. He wasn't a journalist. He was a sensationalist who built his career on tearing things down. He was the perfect tool for Ethan's agenda. The next step was more active. I needed to get inside their OODA loop: observe, orient, decide, act. I needed to make them react to something. I used a prepaid burner phone and sent a simple, anonymous text to Mark Davidson: "Your story on the Creech drone pilot. The brother is lying to you." I didn't expect a response, and I didn't get one. The point wasn't to start a conversation. It was to plant a seed of doubt, to make Davidson wonder if his perfect source was as solid as he seemed. A good reporter might double-check his facts. A hack like Davidson would probably just call Ethan to get reassurance, creating communication I could potentially exploit. The real breakthrough came from an unexpected place: my father. He called me a week after the article was published. "Layla," he said, his voice heavy with shame, "I saw the paper, Jess showed me. I had no idea. I thought your mother was just talking to her friends, venting. I didn't know your brother was behind this." "He's not just behind it, Dad, he's orchestrating it." "I know," he sighed. "I confronted him. He denied it at first, of course, said he was just trying to help your mother, that the reporter twisted his words. But then I asked him about the money." My heart skipped a beat. "What did he say?" "He froze, then he got angry, accused me of taking your side, of not caring that Carol is falling apart. Said the money was for a specialist he found in California who works with military families. It was all bullshit, Layla. I could see it in his eyes." He paused. "Your mother has completely drained her savings account. She's given it all to him." The scale of the betrayal was staggering. It wasn't just $10,000, it was everything. "I'm so sorry, kiddo," my dad said, his voice thick. "I should have seen it. I should have protected you both from him." "It's not your fault, Dad," I said, and I meant it. Ethan had played on my father's desire for peace just as skillfully as he'd played on my mother's fear. "But I need your help. I need to stop him." "Anything," he said. "Whatever you need." My plan began to form, clear and precise. I needed to get Ethan and Davidson in a room together. I needed them to talk. And I needed to record every word. I called Jessica again. "I need to know when Ethan is meeting with that reporter again," I said. "Can you find that out without raising suspicion?" "I think so," she said. "He keeps a calendar on his laptop. He's been acting really paranoid lately, closing it whenever I walk into the room. It just makes me more suspicious. I'll find a way." 2 days later, she called back, her voice a hushed whisper. "He's meeting him tomorrow. Lunch. A diner called the Blue Cactus, out on Route 95. The Blue Cactus. A classic middle-of-nowhere Nevada greasy spoon. It was perfect. Isolated. Few customers. Easy to surveil. That night, Sarah and I went over the plan. We were a 2-woman ISR team. She would be my eyes and ears on the inside. I would be the operator, running the tech from a distance. The next day, Sarah arrived at the Blue Cactus an hour before the meeting. Dressed in jeans and a faded tourist t-shirt for a Vegas casino, she looked like any other traveler passing through. She took a booth near the back, ordered coffee, and pulled out a paperback. Taped to the inside of the book was a tiny, high-fidelity audio bug, no bigger than a dime. She texted me. "In position. Booth has a clear view of the entrance." I was parked a quarter-mile down the road, in a dusty turnout that overlooked the diner. I had a GCS on my lap, but instead of controlling a Reaper, the laptop was connected to a sophisticated suite of listening and recording software. The bug Sarah was carrying was the sensor. I was the pilot. I texted back. "Copy, awaiting target arrival." Ethan arrived first. Sarah texted. "Target 1 has entered the building. He looks nervous, ordering a coffee." A few minutes later, Mark Davidson walked in. He was younger than I expected, with a hungry, ambitious look on his face. Sarah's text came through. Target 2 has arrived. They're taking the booth directly across from me, perfect line of sight. Planting the package now. My screen lit up as the bug went live. I put on my headset, the same one I used in the GCS, and the tinny sounds of the diner filled my ears. Clattering plates, a low murmur of conversation, and then, clear as a bell, Ethan's voice. "Thanks for meeting me, Mark." "No problem," Davidson replied. "I got a weird text the other day. Said you were lying to me. You know anything about that?" My heart hammered against my ribs. The bait had worked. "It's her," Ethan said, his voice dripping with false concern. "My sister. She's paranoid, lashing out. It's exactly the kind of behavior my research warned me about. This is proof of how much she needs our help." I hit the record button. "Okay," Davidson said, sounding relieved, "because the story is getting a lot of traction online. People are really responding to your mother's plight. My editor wants a follow-up, a deeper dive. He wants to know what happens next." "That's what I wanted to talk to you about," Ethan said, his voice dropping. "I think it's time for phase 2. I'm going to convince my mother to stage a formal intervention. We'll have a licensed therapist there and everything. My sister will either agree to get help and quit her job, or she'll refuse, and we'll have a documented case of her instability to take to the Air Force directly. Either way, you'll have an exclusive, the dramatic climax to your story." My blood ran cold. He was planning to manufacture a confrontation and use it as a weapon against me. "That's good stuff," Davidson said, his voice greedy. "Really good. And what about our arrangement?" I held my breath. This was it. "Don't worry," Ethan said with a smug little laugh. "My mom's last check just cleared. Your $5,000 consulting fee will be in your account by the end of the day, for helping me craft the narrative." I leaned back in my seat, a cold, triumphant smile spreading across my face. It was all there: conspiracy, financial motive, acknowledgement of crafting a false narrative, malice. I saved the recording, encrypting it twice. I watched through my binoculars as they shook hands and left the diner separately. Sarah left a few minutes later, leaving a $20 bill for a $2 coffee. As I drove back towards the base, I sent the encrypted audio file to Captain Rivera with a simple subject line: "Actual malice." The email was sent. The silver bullet was fired into the digital ether. For a pilot used to instant feedback, a data link showing a missile hitting its target, a confirmation from troops on the ground. The waiting was the hardest part. I spent the next morning in a state of controlled tension. I went for a run, pushing myself until my lungs burned. I field stripped and cleaned my service pistol, the familiar mechanical process, a calming ritual. I was preparing for a confrontation, not on a battlefield of sand and rock, but in a sterile JAG office and a living room full of ghosts. The call came just before noon. It was Captain Rivera's assistant. "Captain Harris, Captain Rivera would like to see you at 1300 hours, and she says to bring your headset." I walked into her office at 1300 sharp. Rivera was standing by the window, looking out over the flight line. She turned as I entered, and for the first time her professional mask was gone. In its place was a look of cold, contained fury. "I listened to it 3 times, she said, skipping any preamble. She gestured to her computer. "The first time as a lawyer looking for the specific elements of a crime. The second time as an Air Force officer disgusted that anyone would target one of our own like this. The third time," she paused, her eyes meeting mine, "as a woman, just horrified." "Sounds so proud of himself. He thinks he's smarter than everyone else," I said. "He always has." "He's not," she said, her voice clipped and precise. "He's just cruel and sloppy." She sat down behind her desk, all business again. "Okay, Harris, let's break down your options. Your recording changes the entire strategic landscape. What was a difficult libel case is now a potential criminal case." She held up a finger. "Option 1, the civil route. We use this recording as leverage. We send a cease and desist letter from me to both your brother and Mark Davidson. We demand a full retraction of the article from the newspaper. We include a draft of a lawsuit for defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress that we promise to file if they don't comply within 48 hours. It's clean, it's fast, and it will almost certainly work." She held up a second finger. "Option 2, the criminal route. This recording is evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud and potentially wire fraud, given the electronic transfer of money. I can take this to the local district attorney. They would open an investigation. Your brother and Davidson could face actual criminal charges. This is the scorched earth option. It's powerful, but it's slow, and the outcome is out of our hands. It also makes your family drama a matter of public criminal record. She held up a third finger. Option 3, the internal route. This is my primary concern. We take this evidence directly to your chain of command, all the way up to the wing commander if necessary. We use it to formally refute any and all allegations against your mental fitness. We create an official record that this was a malicious, fabricated attack. This option inoculates your career against any future attempts. I process the information. 3 distinct paths, each with its own risks and rewards. Can't we do all 3? We can, Rivera said, but we need to decide the order of operations. What is your main objective, Captain? Is it punishment, vindication, or simply making it all stop? I thought about it. What did I want? Did I want to see Ethan in handcuffs? Maybe. Did I want the world to know he was a liar? Yes. But more than anything, I wanted my life back. I wanted the noise to stop. I wanted to be able to do my job without looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next attack. My objective is to neutralize the threat to my career, I said, the military jargon feeling natural, right? And to ensure this never, ever happens again. Good, Rivera nodded. Then we start with a combination of 1 and 3. We use the threat of the lawsuit to force a public retraction, which helps your military case. While we do that, I'll draft a memo for Major Davis that formally documents this as an external, malicious attack, effectively closing the book on any internal review. She leaned forward, but there's a fourth option, a subset of option 1, the personal approach. What do you mean? Before I send any letters, before any lawyers get officially involved, you could use this recording as leverage yourself. You could confront them directly. Play the tape. Let them hear their own treachery in their own voices. You make your demands in person. Sometimes the shock and awe of a direct strike is more effective than a formal siege. But it's risky. It's emotional. And I would only advise it if you feel you can maintain absolute control of the situation. I thought of Ethan's smug laugh on the recording. I thought of my mother's tear-streaked face, a face he had manipulated for his own gain. A letter from a lawyer felt too distant, too impersonal. They needed to see my face when their world came crashing down. They needed to know that I was the one doing it. That one, I said. I want to do that one. Rivera studied me for a long moment, then nodded. All right. But you do it my way. You establish the time and place. You set the terms, and you record the entire confrontation. In this state, as long as one party consents, and that party is you, it's legal. It will be your insurance policy. My next stop was Major Davis's office. I told him everything. About Jessica's call, the Layla Project folder, the $10,000, the recording. I told him my plan to confront them. His face was granite. They used your mother's fear to commit fraud and attack a U.S. Air Force officer. This is beyond a family matter now. He stood up and walked to the window, just as Rivera had. I support your plan, Captain. A direct confrontation is a valid tactic, but you will not go there alone. That is an order. Sir? Your friend, Captain Sarah Jenkins, I know you two are close. She'll go with you. She'll wait outside. If you are not out of that house in 30 minutes, or if you send her a prearranged distress signal, she will call the local police and me. You are going into a hostile environment. You will have backup. Is that understood? Yes, sir. Crystal clear. Good, he said, turning back to me. Now go plan your mission. And Harris, make them pay. The final piece was my father. I called him that evening. Dad, I said, my voice low and steady. It's worse than we thought. Ethan has been taking money from Mom. A lot of money. He lied about hiring specialists. He's been using it to pay off the reporter. There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line, then a sound like a choked sob. All of it? He took all of her savings. Yes, and I have proof. I have a recording of him and the reporter planning the whole thing. I'm coming home tomorrow. I need you to make sure he and Mom are both at the house at 4 p.m. Can you do that? What are you going to do? He asked, his voice shaking. I'm going to end it, I said. I need you to get them there. Tell them I called, that I'm willing to talk about the intervention Ethan has been planning. Tell them whatever you have to, just make sure they're in that living room at 4 o'clock. I'll do it, he said, a new hardness in his voice. The passive peacekeeper was gone. They'll be there, I'll make sure of it. The next day, Sarah drove. I sat in the passenger seat of her truck, quiet, running through the script in my head. My objectives were clear. 1. Secure a full, public retraction of the article. 2. Ensure the immediate and permanent cessation of all contact and harassment. 3. Get a full confession from Ethan about the money to be used as leverage to protect my mother from further exploitation. As we pulled onto my old street, my heart rate remained steady. I wasn't the scared daughter coming home to be judged anymore. I was an officer, executing a mission. Sarah pulled the truck over a block away from the house, parking under the shade of a mesquite tree. 30 minutes, she said, looking me in the eye. You text me the word status every 10. If I don't get a text, or if you text checkmate, I'm making the calls. Got it? Got it, I said. I had my phone in my hand. The audio file was queued up. My other hand rested on the small digital recorder in my pocket, which was already on. Hey, Layla, she said as I opened the door. Give him hell. I gave her a tight nod and stepped out. I walked down the familiar sidewalk, the cracks in the pavement like lines on an old map. The pale yellow house looked smaller than I remembered. I walked up the porch steps, the wood groaning under my boots. I didn't knock. I opened the screen door and walked inside into the lion's den. They were all there, just as I'd planned, sitting in the living room, arranged like a grim tableau. My mother was on the couch, looking frail and bird-like, a half-empty box of tissues beside her. My father sat in his recliner, his face a stony mask, his hands clenched on the armrests. And Ethan stood by the fireplace, the self-appointed master of ceremonies, his face a blend of feigned concern and smug triumph. He thought he had won. He thought I was there to surrender. Layla, he said, his voice oozing with false sympathy. I'm so glad you decided to come. We were so worried. This is the first step. The first step to what, Ethan? I asked, my voice cool and even. I didn't sit down. I stood in the center of the room, a fixed point of stillness in their swirling emotional storm. To getting you help, he said, gesturing around the room. We're all here because we love you. We just want the old Layla back. The old Layla is gone, I said. She was naive. She believed that family meant unconditional support. She was wrong. I looked directly at my mother. You gave me an ultimatum. Quit my job or I'm no longer your daughter. My mother flinched, tears welling in her eyes. I was scared, Layla. You were selfish. I cut in, my voice sharp but controlled. But I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about this. I pulled out my phone. I'm here to talk about the lies you, I shifted my gaze to Ethan, have been feeding her, the lies you've been feeding the public. Ethan scoffed, a nervous tick in his jaw. Lies. Layla, we're trying to save you from a job that's destroying you. The article was a work of fiction, I said. A story you and a paid-for reporter concocted. You called it crafting the narrative, I believe. The color drained from Ethan's face, he knew. In that instant, he knew he was caught. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? I asked, a cold smile touching my lips. Then maybe this will refresh your memory. I held up my phone, my thumb hovering over the play button. I have a recording, Ethan, of your lunch meeting with Mark Davidson at the Blue Cactus Diner. The whole thing, you talking about the paranoid text I sent him, you planning a fake intervention to use against me, and my personal favorite, you discussing the $5,000 consulting fee you paid him with Mom's money. My mother gasped, looking from me to Ethan, a horrified dawn of understanding breaking across her face. Ethan, what is she talking about? What money? My father spoke for the first time, his voice a low growl. He took it all, Carol, all of your savings. He told you it was for a specialist for Layla. It was a lie. He used it to pay a reporter to print lies about his own sister. Ethan stared at me, his eyes wide with panic and hatred. He saw the trap closing, the exit sealed. You're bluffing, he hissed. You have nothing. Am I said. I pressed play. His own voice filled the room, tinny and clear from the phone's speaker. Your $5,000 consulting fee will be in your account by the end of the day, for helping me craft the narrative. I stopped the recording. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of a truth so ugly it sucked the air out of the room. My mother was openly weeping now, not for me, but for the depth of her son's betrayal. My father just stared at Ethan, his expression one of pure, undiluted contempt. Ethan looked like he had been physically struck. He staggered back a step, his face pale and slick with sweat. You spied on me? ISR, I said calmly. Intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, it's what I do. You should know that, you read the research. I let the weight of it all settle for a moment. I sent a quick text to Sarah, status. She replied instantly, standing by. Here is what is going to happen, I said, my voice leaving no room for negotiation. I was no longer the daughter or the sister. I was the officer in command. First, you are going to call Mark Davidson. Right now. You are going to tell him that the anonymous source has recanted, that all information provided was fabricated, and that if a full retraction is not printed within 24 hours, you both will be facing a lawsuit that will ruin what's left of his sad sack career. Second, I continued, my gaze fixed on Ethan, you are going to write a check to our mother for every single cent you took from her. Today, my father will drive you to the bank. Third, you, Mom, and I are going to have a conversation about professional help. For both of you. Because this sickness, this codependent cycle of fear and manipulation, ends now. And finally, I said, my voice dropping, you will never, ever contact me again. Not you, not Mom, unless it's through a family therapist. You will not speak my name to reporters. You will not discuss my career with anyone. You have lost the privilege of being my family. As of this moment, we are strangers. Ethan just stood there, mute, shattered. It was my mother who finally spoke, her voice choked with sobs. Layla, please don't do this. He's your brother. No, I said, the finality of the word hanging in the air. He was my brother, but that person is gone. The person standing there is a con man who used his mother's love as a weapon and his sister's career as a target. I don't know who he is. I turned and walked to the door. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I had completed my objective. Sarah was waiting in the truck, the engine running. I got in, and for a long moment I just sat there, breathing. Checkmate? She asked softly. Checkmate, I confirmed. I leaned my head back against the seat, and for the first time in months I felt the tension drain away, replaced by a vast, quiet, and profound sense of peace. I had faced the enemy, and I had won. The aftermath was quiet. The Nevada Sentinel printed a full retraction, citing new information that has proven the foundational claims of the article to be false and fabricated. Mark Davidson was fired. My father made sure Ethan paid back every penny. My mother, with my father's support, finally started seeing a therapist. I never spoke to Ethan again. I got one letter from my mother a few months later. It wasn't an apology, not really. It was more of a confession, a rambling acknowledgement of her fear and how Ethan had twisted it. It ended with one simple line, I hope one day you'll understand. I never wrote back. Understanding wasn't the same as forgiveness, and forgiveness wasn't the same as reconciliation. Back at Creech, Major Davis called me into his office. Captain Rivera's memo and a copy of the retraction were in my file. The family issue was officially a closed case. You handled it, Captain, he said, a rare note of approval in his voice. You protected yourself, you protected the integrity of this squadron. That's leadership. My life found a new normal, a better normal. Free from the weight of my family's expectations and anxieties, I excelled. I became a mentor to the younger pilots. I took on more complex missions. My work wasn't a job, it was a calling. It wasn't about the violence my mother feared, it was about the protection it provided. It was about watching over a team of soldiers on the ground, knowing that my eyes, my focus, my skill were the only things standing between them and a threat they couldn't see. That wasn't a moral injury, it was a moral imperative. Sometimes, when I'm flying a mission late at night, looking down at the world through a screen, I think about the different kinds of distance. There's the physical distance, the 10,000 miles between my chair and the battlefield. And then there's the emotional distance we have to create to protect ourselves, even from the people who are supposed to be the closest to us. Betrayal from an enemy is expected. Betrayal from family is a wound that cuts deeper than any weapon, but it doesn't have to be a fatal one. You can heal. You can rebuild. You can create your own family, one built not on blood, but on loyalty, respect, and a shared mission. You learn that your own strength, your own integrity, is a fortress no one can breach unless you give them the key. And you learn that sometimes, the bravest thing you can ever do is choose yourself. To fly your own mission, to chart your own course, and to never, ever let anyone else tell you how high you're allowed to go.